Thank you for staying with us. As more tales of anti-democratic exercises that took place in the just concluded governorship and state houses of assembly election come to light, the United Kingdom says it is collating a list of names of individuals whose actions threatened the electoral process. The UK says perpetrators of violence, voter suppression and intimidation, vote buying, destruction, and hijacking of election materials, and the general disruption of the process in various locations face possible punishment. After investigations are done, the UK could impose visa bans on such individuals or sanctions under the country's human rights sanctions regime. Well, joining us now in the studio is Olutubosun Oshifora, a lawyer and social development advocate. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here. Good morning.
And while political analyst Michael Oluwagbemi joins us via Zoom. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Michael.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Right. Let's begin with you, Michael. What are your impressions of the developments that we saw with regards to voter suppression, intimidation, violence, electoral violence in general, leading up to the governorship election and even during the election? Because a lot of persons thought that we had grown past this level, but eventually we saw how things panned out.
Thank you once again to your viewers, and good morning to everybody. It's always an unfortunate situation when democratic stakeholders in our democracy do not behave to standard. It's always disappointing when we don't demonstrate the ethos of democracy in our own behaviors every day as a people. And I have to say that every Nigerian should condemn, everybody of goodwill and every patriot of this republic should condemn any acts of violence, intimidation, or anti-democratic behavior during elections, because elections are not war. And as participants in our democracy, we should all join hands together to continue to improve our behavior during democracy. But I have to say that this behavior do not just emanate during elections. The reality of the matter is that the social-political behavior of political animals in a democracy it continues to be consistent through the periods of democracy and only becomes more evident during elections when we zoom into those behavior and we're able to more ably recognize them. So I think the focus should not be on just elections. The focus should be how do we build in our country democratic culture that starts from the smallest political unit of the country, which is the family. How do we imbibe ethos of democracy as a people, accepting that the voice of the minority will be heard, but the will of the majority will proceed without any semblance of violence, and even extend this behavior to not just the family, beyond to the clan, to our villages, our towns, our cities, and states, and of course at the national level. But even more importantly, sometimes at the international level. I say this without any, without also trying to be duplicitous. That I found it interesting that the UK is threatening to impose an anti-democratic measure in order to solve an anti-democratic behavior. I don't know who made the United Kingdom a judge, prosecutor and jury over Nigeria's democracy. The age of colonialism is long gone. I will expect that the United Kingdom, that does not behave very democratically at the United Nations Security Council, should begin to even question and interrogate its own behavior at the international level, instead of trying to impose on democratic measures on an independent and sovereign nation. So I don't think that either United Kingdoms or the United States threat are really what we should pay attention to. I think those countries themselves have a lot of ways to go when it comes to behaving themselves democratically at the international level, which sometimes feeds this bullish behavior by individuals at the both community and national levels across the world, and does diminish democracy and democratic culture across all nations. I think our own focus should be how do we improve our democracy. After all, Britain did not leave us much in terms of quality of democracy when they left this country with less than 10,000 educated people to function in a democracy. We've been able to improve a whole lot than when they left us in 1960, and I think we should be focused on continuing to improve ourselves instead of worrying ourselves about what the United Kingdom or what the United States. Countries also have their own problems, by the way, and their own electoral irregularities that are widely publicized. And instead of trying to worry about whether they will ban one person or the other, I don't understand where they come up with those kind of undemocratic behavior themselves.
All right, but the point there is some Nigerians have also said that, well, banning those that had been identified by them to have participated in the election process in a way that did not promote the election is just being hypocritical. Because recall that there are lots of Nigerians that have stolen monies from this country, taken them to the UK, and so many other countries around the world. And Britain didn't, or those countries didn't ban the Nigerians whom they know that, in fact, the idea of even returning some of the monies tells the fact that, or puts everything plain to the fact that actually this person stole some monies and kept in our coffers. We've been holding the monies for the last 20 years or 30 years, depending on which one we're talking about, but it's time to return it now. So talk to us from that window where it looks like there's hypocrisy where you want to ban or punish those electoral observers, yet you are not banning or punishing those who are corrupt outrightly.
All right, I've been laughing since because, what you said just echoed a few of the things that some of my friends on different platforms have raised. And if you look at the last speaker spoke very well. And if you look at this, someone said it sounds, the announcement by the UK is cosmetic and is good for the television. One, if you want to sanction people, are you sanctioning people that are outside your jurisdiction? That's one. Now, I think before we go on, it's best to lay the foundation that we do not support any kind of electoral malpractice or any kind of,
irregularities.
Irregularities.
Yeah.
Definitely, we will not sanction that. Now, but UK coming in. Now, if you look at it at the point of jurisdiction, this is a sovereign nation, like the last speaker said. So how much influence can you wield in that regard? Then secondly, you said you've collated names. If we look at it, I mean, without mincing words, we saw at some point even the UK projecting a certain candidate as their favorite in the last presidential election. Now, so are we sure that you're not picking people from the other side wouldn't align with your own candidate? That's even one. Then two, how do you now pinpoint those? You said you've collated names. Now, there are electoral offences here. Are there people that the courts have sanctioned, or are there people that have, appeared before the court
and been convicted?
The courts have convicted them of electoral offences, or you just want to do random picking of people? How do you now ascertain under what basis, under what law would we say that these people were guilty? Who tried them? What evidence are available to you to be able to pronounce them so? We have laws here that deals with that, and even by our laws, it says it's only a court of competent jurisdiction that can actually pronounce someone as a criminal. Now, having gone through, the processes and everything. Now, so UK compiling names, it sounds nice, it sounds brilliant, it sounds supportive of the democratic process. But is it practicable? Is it actualizable? These are the things we have to look at from this. Then coming to your point that some people have stolen money and then put in their system. They're not dealing with those ones. Then you're just looking for some cheap offenders to deal with. That remains in the realm of allegation. And I know that the UK does not support corruption or corrupt practices in any form, whether financial or electoral. So I think if there are cases like that, maybe if we put them forward, then we'll see actually what the UK can do in that regard.
Don't forget that there were some loots that were being returned to Nigeria, which, of course, it's been on record that some of those loots were monies that were stashed in those countries by some of the politicians that were here before. So by the reason whether it has been confirmed by a court of competent jurisdiction or not, but by the fact that there's an evidence that monies are being returned to Nigeria 20, 30, 40 years after. And also the fact that some monies were stolen.
The only celebrated case we have, or name that we have, is Abacha. Unfortunately, he's dead. So maybe if he were alive, they probably would have known the direction of the UK and know whether they're actually serious in sanctioning him. But, I mean, you can't do anything to the dead, and then you can't... criminal activities are not transferable. You can't say because you are Abacha's son or so. So we don't have other celebrated names, except we have them on record. Then we can actually hold the UK responsible that, okay, this person did this at this point. You have fine repatriated the money, but you have not done anything to this person. But we don't have such. I don't have any name like that at this point. So, but let's just give them the benefit of the doubt that when it comes to financial issues and corruption, looting of funds like that, I think they will want to take the same stand. But I feel that people would rather you deal with that and leave electoral offences to the courts here to deal with. And then the one that concerns us and our Commonwealth, maybe you return it, then maybe you actually sanction those people. So that will serve as a deterrent to other people who intend to work in the same stride. Then we'll know that the UK is actually serious.
All right, let's go back to Michael, because there were some things you, Olutobosun, raised that I want to throw them at him, talking about the indices for picking these persons and how practicable they are. What will be the indices? What will be the yardstick for, these people if they haven't gone through the processes and convicted by the courts, and then the UK can say that they are picking them up?
I just also wanted to add to my co-guest thoughts there that maybe I'm not even as confident that the UK does not support financial corruption. Because we also know that as an institution of state, the massive looting of Africa, both for slavery and during colonialism, are something that the states of the United Kingdom is still years to pay reparations for, and to own up to the fact that it looted the Benin artworks, and they need to return it. A thief is a thief is a thief. So maybe let's start with that. But anyway, moving on to... Moving on to this issue around how do you even identify, and how do you cannot be the judge, the prosecutor, and the jury in your own case. The United Kingdom cannot, by reason of innuendos or by reason of allegations by one side, by the way, in Africa's political culture, that we know that we have a lot of bad losers, make wild allegations without also coming forward to say, okay, this is what I also did during the election. You must come to the altar of equity, you must do so with clean hands. As UK bans and unbans, will it be subjected to judicial review? Who gives them the right to automatically or unilaterally determine who gets to be punished or who doesn't get to be punished? Does this not constitute an interference on the sovereignty of the country so involved, in this case Nigeria? Not the mean country by any chance, the largest economy in Africa, the richest country in the history of the world that is black. Is this not another form of institutionalized international racism, where United Kingdom does not ban the United States for its own insurrection after his last election led by Donald Trump, but decides that it's now going to get involved or interwoven in Nigeria's election? Why did it not ban the United States when Putin got involved in that election and compromised the process, which was widely acknowledged even by the United States itself and its electoral system? Why did it not get involved in Brazil? Why did it not get involved in these other white countries, but suddenly discovered its sanctimony when it comes to Nigeria? By the way, this is the same United Kingdom in 2015, where it was discovered that there were technical glitches across its own election that was held on May 7th, 2015. Over 100 people were unable to cast their vote in Bournemouth. Over in Hackney and Dorset, there were technical glitches and information and technology, not very different from what INEC experienced. Electoral Commission investigated issues around overseas voting that did not receive their voting packs on election day. In Tower Hamlets, the High Court suspended the mayor after he was found guilty of falsifying postal votes. I mean, these are issues that the UK's own electoral system continues to have. So when is it going to ban its own citizens and its own people from participating in its own election and then stop just prognosing it? The days of colonialism are over. I think these colonial masters need to mind their own business. They need to leave Nigeria's judicial system that has proven to be able to weed out the bad eggs. And they need to allow Nigeria to go through its own political evolution. Like I said, the United Kingdom left Nigeria with less than 10,000 educated literates in 1960 and expected Nigeria to have a functional democracy. It took Nigeria some step backwards and the engagement in some, of course, military rule that allowed it to mature and then come back to this democracy in 1999 with at least 30 million literate voters, which is what it is now operating with. So I think to some extent, the United Kingdom should acknowledge that Nigeria is a much better off as a country that was left with no university. University College Ibadan was the only so-called university, but was an outpost of the University of London in 1960, to be an essential ingredient of democracy being the ability of people to even read and write their own constitution, literacy, and left Nigeria with no capacity to function as a democracy in 1960. But 30, 40 years later, we're able to find our way to do so, and we are doing so, yet we are a child. We are not the same as the United Kingdom, relatively, when it comes to democracy, that have been operating the Magna Carta since the 1700s, and the parliament since then. But we also have our history. They have their history of Cromwell and the dictators and the crown and the succession rights and all the crown, the battles of the roses and the crown back in the 1700s and 1600s. Their own dictator, their own coup that was planned, that Cromwell. They outgrew that process. This is a process. Democracy is progress. We're a process. They should stop making it look like democracy is some magic that we imposed by some kind of white masters. We need to stop this level of international racism, and the United Kingdom has always been guilty of this and trying to always exacerbate the problem of Africa. Rather, what it should focus on is the progress that Nigeria has made from 1999, when Bill Clinton and Tony Blair were voters on our voters' roll, to today, where we now have BVAS, we have PVC, we have made a lot of progress when it means accrediting voters. Yes, there's progress needs to be made when it comes to issue around voter intimidation, use of information technology. Similar progress that needs to be made in the United Kingdom. There's progress that needs to be made in case of not bringing or injecting ethnicity and religion into the election. Similar to progress that needs to be made in the United Kingdom, where they have issues of ethnicity and racism when it comes to black and white voters. We have the same things between different ethnic groups in Nigeria. Every country have their issues and peculiar issues. Nobody is sanctioning UK. Why should anybody be sanctioning Nigeria? Right. Nobody's willingly picking out British people that are involved in these problems in Cromwell and Bournemouth, as I've already read out. Why is anybody picking out the Nigerian politician without actually going through the Nigerian judicial process? I think we need to speak to the fact the United Kingdom needs to focus on its own internal problem, return the loot that they looted from Nigeria instead of focusing on Nigeria.
All right, we need to quickly go on a commercial break. When we return, we'll continue the conversation. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Before we went on the break, we've been speaking with a guest with regards to the UK saying that it is collating names of persons that could have, in one way or the other, undermined the 2023 elections. And our guests have been reacting to that. Now, let me come to you, Olutubosun. Our guest via Zoom, talking about Michael, mentioned the fact that this can constitute some level of interference in our sovereignty as a country. Do you see it as that?
Absolutely. That's the way it's perceived generally. I mean, this is a sovereign nation, and another sovereign nation trying to step into their affairs. That's why I alluded earlier that we have our own internal mechanisms of dealing with issues like this. So the best the UK can do is that, okay, fine, we have observed certain anomalies. Then you can come up with your own white paper, blue paper, yellow paper, then send to the government that these are the things we have seen. Not you standing there and then saying that this is what we would do to perceived electoral offenders in your country. That is condescending, and that's also overreaching. And it sounds like they're grandstanding that, after all, you're a former colony. So we can actually still look into your affairs and play that oversight role and all. It doesn't appear, the optics are not particularly in favor of Nigeria. I mean, they're still dealing with us like a big brother, and this is my last born. I'm still controlling your affairs. It doesn't appear too nice. with the way they're going about it. So the best way they could go about it is by getting in touch with the government and saying, these are our observations, and then this is what we feel. We recommend that you do or take care of this, or with subsequent elections, these are the things. If they come out like that, then it shows a good relationship, or that they're being relational in a good way than, looking at Nigeria in a very condescending manner that, okay, we'll pick this. And I said something earlier, which is very fundamental. We saw some of this, the UK and also the Western world project a certain candidate. Now, so how do you tell us? How do you eliminate bias? Because, and then you see this thing also, we've seen supporters of certain groups and parties come out and say, particularly when they lose in certain quarters, they go like, we'll call the United Nations, we'll call on the UK. We've seen tweets like that, that they should ban this person, they should look into this. So this thing is not going in the right direction, because at the end of the day, you give some people some leeway, some undue influence, because they feel, okay, now if this happens, let's report him to the UK. What's the UK? Is the UK our father? No, it doesn't work like that. This is a sovereign country, and our sovereignty must be respected. Now, they can contribute because they also have vested interests. You cannot deny their interests, both economic, political, and everything. And they have a right to protect whatever they have, but not in a condescending manner. They have to come in a relational manner, and not something that you want to come and oversee what's going on in Nigeria, then with sanction, it doesn't work like that. I can't come into your house and do the same thing. And I think Michael also said that some things happened in the U.S. We didn't see the UK step up and say, no, U.S. too was a former colony. And then they didn't say that. Now, so it's undermining our sovereignty. Basically, I feel the statement undermines Nigeria's sovereignty, and it's not supposed to be in the League of Nations. No country is bigger than the other one. So that's my...
All right, Michael, one would see from another perspective as to the UK has the right in its own self to say, if I perceive that this person is either corrupt or was involved in election malpractice in his country, we stand the right to prevent the person from coming into our country. I believe the UK has that right in its own self. However, in the situation where it is working with Nigeria, what would you see it as collaborative with Nigeria, considering the relationship that we've had all the while? Would you also see this as collaborative to ensure that they help or assist Nigeria to point to those who are working to undermine the system as a way of serving as deterrent? Can we also see it from that perspective?
Thank you very much. It's 2023, and I find it somewhat insulting that access to the UK is now like access to heaven, or some kind of merit that's in an era of free trade and free access. I find it very hilarious, really, to be honest. That we still use UK visa. I mean, there was at independence, most Nigerians don't get visa to go to the UK. The fact that it even exists, and we now have trade posts and border posts between ourselves after they looted us for over 100 years, says so much about international racism. So I have a very different opinion about visa restrictions on Africans by countries that already looted them and looted their people over 200, 300 years of slavery that was supported by the United Kingdom, both the United States and the Caribbean across the world. So I have my own opinion about that, separate aside from this. But for them to for you to say you are helping Nigeria, will have to be that kind of judgment you're making, even in this so-called restrictive visa process, is based on Nigeria's own judicial process. You cannot by yourself say you are compiling a list. Whose list is it? Is it an independent judiciary? Does the UK now have set up their own judicial system to try Nigerians? No. If the United Kingdom is helping or assisting the Nigerian Independent National Electoral Commission, and I know there are ways to do that, to try electoral offences, because it's already in our electoral law how to identify and try electoral offences. They are providing technical assistance. You are providing information that you have. You are assisting the judicial process along the way. And then ultimately, those people who are convicted will then have to answer to that conviction when they go for any visa, not just the United Kingdom visa. Any visa process, we ask you, have you been arrested? Have you been convicted in a court of law? Then that is that. There's no need for you to now come out and be grandstanding on TV and talking about, oh, you're going to ban people based on a list. That list sounds to me like witch hunting. That list sounds to me like favoritism. That list sounds to me like it's list of that was given to the United Kingdom by people that are sabotaging the Nigerian judicial process. So I will be worried about the people giving these names to the United Kingdom. In fact, I would consider them saboteurs or probably enemies of state. Because if you are giving the list of your fellow citizens to a foreign country, then you are sabotaging your country. You are undermining your country. You are spying on your country. You are giving information about your fellow countrymen to a foreign country. So I will not even consider any kind of collaborators or saboteurs of Nigerian state or Nigerian people with a foreign country as something that is so legitimate. So I will be looking and saying that the United Kingdom, what they should be doing is what my brother in the studio have said. How do you assist the Nigerian Independent National Electoral Commission to try offenders? We have videos. We have videos of people who were intimidated. We have videos of people who were actively beaten. There was a video of a young man that was beaten, almost killed. And even a lady that was on Twitter boasting that she helped kill somebody. And even helped beat up a policeman. How can you help us track down that lady? With your advanced electronic capacity as a former colonial master and somebody who benefited from looting our resources to build your own capacity. Can you help us use that capacity to track down this lady, ensure she's tried, ensure she's convicted, and then she automatically goes on your visa ban list? You don't need to say it. The moment she's convicted and tried, all over the world, even if you are coming into Nigeria, if you're a Briton and you're coming into Nigeria, if you have a conviction in the United Kingdom, we won't allow you. It's as simple as that. Every country in the world knows that you don't allow criminals in. So what they should focus on is how do you build up the capacity of the Independent National Electoral Commission, which, by the way, has not shown a track record of being able to identify, track, and actually convict electoral offenders. And that can be United Kingdom's own contribution to Nigeria's democracy, instead of grandstanding, interference, and acting holier than thou, which is what we are seeing right now with this their statement.
Right. Let's bring the question to you now, Bosun, because I was going to ask about it is often said that you allow people to address you the way you dress. And so how has Nigeria been able to handle some of these matters? Electoral offences perhaps might be the reasons why they are able to grandstand and speak in the way in the manner they are speaking. Because we mentioned they wouldn't speak to the US in this manner. They wouldn't speak to some other countries in this manner. But how have we been able to manage our own affairs such that we do not have this interference in any way?
All right. Unfortunately, we haven't fared too well.
Right.
But we have improved. Sincerely speaking, I was on a program and someone was reading out the statistics of death that have been witnessed over time since even 99 up to present. And we saw, we don't pray for any kind of death. Death is not supposed to be associated with election. But at least if you look at where we're coming from and where we are, there's a whole lot of improvement. Even the electoral process, we witnessed some level of improvement. Some things that were obtainable in the past are no longer, obtainable now. So we've improved. Now, but at the same time, I guess, however we have fared, it does not lie in the mouth of any other person to say that this is what I will do to your people for what they've done here. It doesn't.
This is not the first time they are making statements like this.
Well, that's why I said they made the statement. Let me hold a brief for them, even though I'm not paid to do that. Now, I think maybe the intention, let me give them the benefit of the doubt, that the intention was not to be condescending. They feel they're being supportive, that, okay, people who do this here, we will see what we can do to them at our own end. But like we've said from the beginning of this program, the fact is, instead of taking that kind of stance, which to a large extent shows may bring up a level of bias on your part, because those you intend to sanction, there's a process here, there's a judicial process here. If they've gone through that process, then automatically, without even saying it, you can go ahead with whatever you think you want to do. But you saying it without them going through the process here means you are undermining our judicial process. Now, what we have here, we have electoral laws that deals with offenders of all kinds of offenses in relation to elections. Now, and the system is viable, the system is functional, and the system is working. We've seen convictions here and there over the period. Now, so the only thing anybody can do, and I think like Michael said, is assist with your own superior surveillance, maybe in tracking. There are people who may have caused certain damage during the election or been offended in certain ways, and then perhaps they ran out of the country. You can track them and then, bring them back to the country to face the law, not you sanctioning them in your own enclave. As for visa ban, it's the exclusive preserve. They have the right to ban whoever they want, to stop whoever they want from their country. There's nothing in that regard. But how fair is the process? That's actually what we're looking at. And I think the whole thing about this election has been, you saw a candidate say he's not even challenging the result, it's the process. Now, so whatever thing we want to do, let's look at the process. Let's put up a viable process.
What will be fair in the process? What will be fair?
What will be fair is that you allow the system here deal with the offender here. That's why you find that even in international law practice, if somebody offends in a certain jurisdiction, there are ways you go about it.
Yeah.
If there's a fugitive, that's crossed over to Nigeria, and he perpetrated some, crime in the UK, it's not for Nigeria to start trying the person. Then we have bilateral relations. We can actually look into that, look at how it affects the situation. Then, okay, if we have to repatriate this person to you, then fine. Or if the offense warrants that this person be tried in this jurisdiction, so we have to go back to what we have, the system we have, the relationship we have, then that's what we should do, not somebody standing and playing the big brother role when it's not as if we are indolent or we are incapacitated. We can do that. Our laws are there, our laws are functional and viable. So however we panned out, I think Michael also said something earlier on that we're an imagined democracy. 40 years, 50 years, fine. I mean, if you look at what we have now, if we pick it from 99, there's still some, trying to find our footings and all that, but we will get there. I mean, I always say this every time, that the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. We're improving. We will get there, but what we need is more of collaboration than someone grandstanding. That's the crux of this argument.
Right.
All right, Michael, let me come to you on this. The point there is, some would say this could also be a wake-up call to Nigeria, considering some issues in the past that Nigeria may not have handled well, and then in such kind of cases, other countries handle them well. Recall that some time ago, the United Arab Emirates had to jail some Nigerians for funding terrorism. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Nigeria said they got a list of about 400 people. Till now, Nigerians are still waiting for that prosecution to take place, for either the names to be released, or even if they are not released publicly, for them to be prosecuted. So when it comes to antecedents, one would say Nigeria sometimes can be slow to doing some of these things. But could we also see this as a wake-up call from the part of Nigeria, what they need to do to ensure that they become hands-on with prosecuting electoral offenders?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are two wake-up calls there, and I think we alluded to the various days of the program. One is that as a country, we should continue to improve, especially when it comes to improvement of our own judicial process and how quickly is disposes of offenders, because justice delayed sometimes becomes justice denied. There's no doubt in my mind that our current judicial process can be quickened up. I think the various proposals have gone to the extent where we should have independent prosecutor offices across the country. Attorneys should be linked to the office of the Attorney General across Nigeria instead of the current system that is concentrated at the center. We should divide Nigeria into prosecutorial districts where you have federal attorneys that are appointed by the Attorney General that have the fiat to prosecute federal offenses across Nigeria. Maybe tallying those with the senatorial districts of Nigeria, the 109 senatorial districts. So you have 109 federal attorneys who have the fiat of the Attorney General or to then prosecute and go after federal offenders on issues, because not all offenses are federal. We have to remember that. A vast majority of offenses in Nigeria today are state, and state prosecutors and state judiciary often are backed up and are not able to even memo or refer federal offenses to the federal level. Federal offenses are peculiar, specifically in this issue of elections. Election issues are federal offenses. So we need to set up special federal prosecutor offices across Nigeria, instead of where we depend on multifaceted MDAs like INEC, like EFCC to do the prosecution, or even the Nigerian police. That by the way, is Department of Public Prosecution is tied up trying to support state attorney general offices to try the normal everyday offenses like stealing, like your typical everyday criminal offenses. So there's a need for us to reform the system. We have many lawyers that are unemployed, for crying out loud. Why are we not setting up federal prosecutor offices across the 109 senatorial districts, staffing them properly with lawyers to go after federal offenders, everything from corruption to kidnapping and terrorism to electoral offenses? These are the issues that federal prosecutor offices should try. And the Attorney General office currently is not set up for that. Everything goes to the desk of the Attorney General of a federation. It's time for us to look at that system, that structure, and move towards a system where offenders can easily be tried. And I think that is that's what I call pragmatic reform instead of the grandstanding we are talking about. Secondly, is the issue around the other thing that I will talk about when it comes to what this should make us do, is that the way we talk about our country. I think there's a Yoruba proverb that says that if you use your relative like a dustpan, other people will turn your relative to a trash can. We should mind the way we talk about our country and we belong to our country, both on social media and outside. When you go out there and you trash the Nigerian judiciary or you trash the Nigerian electoral system, then you allow foreigners and outsiders like the United Kingdom to trash you. As far as I'm concerned, the INEC has not performed very badly, given the circumstances that they are operating within, given the socio-political culture of the Nigerian politician, given the socio-political reality of the age of our democracy. INEC has done incredibly well with what they've been given and handed over to them. For example, they had this last issue of reconfiguring the beavers that went to court, that delayed them, that made them to postpone the election by 1 week. I mean, in other crimes, they will not have to confront that socio-political behavior. But here in Nigeria, they have to. And they have to live within the boundaries of that socio-political behavior. So you don't expect INEC to outperform the limitations that it confronts in Nigeria today. The fact that it has to work with a police authority that might not even have money to power the petrol, to power their vehicles, to fuel their vehicles. I mean, does the Electoral Commission of the United Kingdom or the United States have to deal with this issue? No, but INEC does, and INEC have to deal with the ethics of this. So we need to stop trashing our national institutions. Now, some people are already trashing the judiciary, even before they approach the judiciary. They've not even delivered a petition to the judiciary to try their case. They're already saying they don't expect justice from the judiciary. This is the same judiciary, by the way, that pronounced against the sitting president on a national policy just about less than a month ago, that ruled against the president, that instructed the CBN to undo a national policy. Yet, we're already trashing that same judiciary. So we should be careful about the way we speak about ourselves. We should be patriotic Nigerians. Let's forget 1 minute our partisanship. You support APC or you support the PDP. When you're talking about Nigeria, outside Nigeria, or to non-Nigerians, then it's about Nigeria's interests first. We should first focus about upholding the national honor and integrity of Nigeria. And we should stop trashing Nigerian institutions and stop calling strangers into our own business. What business are we reporting Nigeria to United Nations or Nigeria to International Criminal Court? I saw one of the parties already wrote a letter yesterday to the ICC. That's ridiculous. That is treasonous. That's the kind of behavior that we should not tolerate in our political system. We should stop this behavior of behaving like slaves in a community of owners. We are Nigerians. We are people of a proud nation, the biggest country in Africa with the biggest economy, the richest black country in the history of mankind. And then we should be reporting ourselves to a bunch of people who are colonial masters, who themselves are looters, and have reparations to pay to our continent after looting our continent of its people and its resources for over 300 years.
All right.
Or can you be reporting yourself to the person that offended? So we as a people need to start talking about ourselves in a way that's a manner that upholds our honor and integrity.
All right, that's a fine place to leave the conversation this morning. We must thank you, political analyst Michael Uluagbemi, as well as Olutubosun Oshifowora, lawyer and social development advocate.